Welcome to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart podcast. Doing business in life with a purpose, serving others, and achieving success. How about that? I'm your host, Steve Ramona. We created this show for you because we want everyone to learn how to do business and life to make an impact in the world. I want you to think about, audience, who you're going to impact today and how you're going to serve them. My guest today, which we just off the cuff did a podcast. I love these because they're so fun. Talk about making an impact, because culture and impact, I believe, go together in business. If you're missing one, you're not having the other. And she's going to talk more about that. Lyndsay, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Steve. This is fun.
This is going to be a blast. So tell me, culture in business. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. To me, culture, when it's good, it drives results. And when you have a culture that is psychologically safe, that is full of trust, you will collaborate, innovate, create new best practices. And when people feel secure and they feel respected and supported, that's when the magic happens. And I have so many stories, which is why I do my podcast, why I wrote my book, so many stories that illustrate why this works and how it works. I think so often people get into leadership for the wrong reasons, and they think it's that next rung on the ladder they need to achieve in order to be seen as successful, but they're not being asked the question, or they're not asking the question of why do you want to go into leadership? And to me, leaders model the culture that they want. So if you are the kind of leader who jumps up and down on tables and screams at people, don't expect your people to act differently. They won't. And let's not confuse perks with culture. That's just cultural Febreze. So if you have ping pong tables and free beer on Fridays, that's great. That's a perk. Swag is a perk. That is not culture. Culture is a feeling, and it is the reason that people will stay or go.
That's a big difference. I'm glad you said that, because I know a lot of people, hey, more money, bonuses, all that, and you're not really building culture. You're just building your ego, in my eyes. You have heartbeat officer. You have heart in the title of your business. Why?
Well, part of when I built my company, the reason that I did this was I knew how to build modern leaders, and I knew how to create culture that drives results. And what I saw in my many years of leadership and living in corporate America was when you give people the space to do the jobs they were hired for, and you treat them as heartbeats and not headcount, you give them all kinds of room to be extraordinary and do other things that they didn't know they could. And I'll just tell you a little story. I had a boss. I was managing one of the most prestigious accounts. I was working at IBM. I was a client exec. I had a $150 million quota for one account. This account, we were partners, competitors, and each other's clients. So talk about strings attached to everything we did.
Wow.
And so it was complicated, but I built this strategy. I was all excited to share it with my boss. And I tell her, I said, okay, Sherry, so I want to tell you my strategy. Here's what I'm thinking. And she listened for a little bit and she said, girl, I've got your back. Now fly. And those words were so powerful to me. I turned to my team of 55 and said, guys, we have an opportunity to think differently. What haven't we done? Who haven't we talked to? Are we talking to each other? Like, what else can we do? And this inspired so much collaboration and such an infectious environment. We built much deeper relationships than we ever had with the client, but we closed the largest deal either of us had ever seen. It was over $23 million. It changed the way we all worked together. It changed the way we viewed each other, client and customer, or client and vendor. And ultimately, we crushed it. We all made a shit ton of money. So it was just a phenomenal thing, all stemming from that one statement of, I got your back.
Yeah.
So to me, when you operate from the heart and you operate from a servant mindset, you are lifting others up. And that is always a way that people will give you their best, versus, the micromanagement style,
Right.
which never inspired anyone. So
That story is a true servant leader. She was, and probably still is, a servant leader. I love hearing that.
Yeah.
The other word that's kind of interesting in business is love. Love my employees, love my competitors, love my vendors,
Yeah.
love. Culture has to have a little love in it, doesn't it?
It does. And I think, love is a tricky one, especially
Mhm.
I grew up working with a lot of men who really steered clear. I mean, in sales, they don't like you to talk about emotions. It's business and it's pressure and it's quota, and there's not a lot of room for that. But the people that did the best had the most fun, had people that wanted to be around them. I always knew when I had a team of people, very often I was not the only account that they worked on. So I needed to create a space where they wanted to be. They knew they could make money, but they knew they could have fun. They knew I would see them. I would give them as many opportunities as I could. And when I did that, they're like, oh no, she's a blast. Like, let's go crush it over there. We have choices. So that's where the love comes in. And it's more about, I see you and you're really good at analytics. I have some work to do that I don't really want to do, but you'd be awesome at this. Can I support you? And it's on me, but do you want to try?
Yeah.
And when you do that, people feel incredibly seen. They feel like this is a new opportunity. This is exciting. So everybody wants to work with purpose, and that's where I think the passion can come in. And even in corporate jobs, when the mission is not yours, when you can attach yourself to what you're doing and it
Yeah.
speaks to your heart, you're going to be better at it. It's
Yeah.
just
And
that
I
simple.
love women leaders like you becoming more involved in business because you're bringing the love to us guys that we know love is not a forefront emotion for us. I kind
No.
of try to show it more than I'm learning to be better, but I
Well,
do
I mean,
think
it's
you
a
could.
servant
Yeah,
mindset
exactly.
podcast.
You,
So
you
of
got to
course.
have love. And so I
Yeah.
appreciate that so much. Now you got a company that
Yeah.
says, I love what you're saying, Lyndsay, but what
Mhm.
tips can you give me to improve my culture and my company?
Yeah. So the first thing I'm going to say is we are going to retire the phrase soft skills because that
Mm.
diminishes what they are. We call them power skills. And this is what makes good leaders great leaders. Power skills are things like vulnerability, creating trust, building psychological safety. Delegation is a power skill, and we can dig in on that one. But there are so many that we all inherently know as humans, but we forget when it's business and there's pressure. It's get it done, get it done, get it done. And if you just take a minute to just say, okay, what are you working on? How can I help? What are you worried about? And if you fail, I've got you.
Yeah.
When you can create those environments, that's where the magic happens. And vulnerability is such a hot one right now. Everybody's talking about, oh, be vulnerable, be vulnerable. Well, in my mind, vulnerability, there's a spectrum. And
Yes.
I'm coaching a leader right now, and she's a CEO and really smart, totally heart-centered leader, but she was a CFO. So she came from this like accountant mindset, and she doesn't yet have her voice as this heart-centered C-suite leader. So we're working on that. But this is an opportunity for her to be vulnerable. And you don't have to say, I was terrible at accounting and now I'm a CFO. Like, you don't have to do that. You can say, this morning I slipped and fell on the ice. I have the most giant bruise on my butt. Have any of you guys slipped on the ice today? Are you guys safe? Hey, it's just making you human. It's making you relatable. It's being transparent. It's saying, I got problems too, because we all do. And hey, newsflash, nobody knows everything. So when you can talk about your growth and something that you learned or something that you did, like a horrible thing that happened to you, and what you did coming out of it, that makes you memorable. So yeah, this is there. We could do the entire show about power skills,
Yeah,
but
no, it's very cool.
those are just some examples and it really changes the feel of the culture of the company when you really hone in on those skills.
Yeah, that power skills. I love that. I wrote that down. That's a great word, great way of looking at it,
Good. No more
and
soft
communicating.
skills.
Yeah, yeah. No more. I'm with you on that one. So somebody's listening and going, okay, great advice, Lyndsay.
Yeah.
ROI is a big part of business.
Yeah.
KPIs, we have that all over,
Sure.
good or bad, doesn't matter. So
Yep.
what does a company expect, or a CEO or founder going, okay, I've started this culture. What are my
Yeah.
benefits I'm going to get?
Yeah. So I think people think that because it's a feeling, it's not measurable, but
Right.
it is. I mean, let's talk about all the ways you can measure. So first, do you have training programs? If you do, what is your success rate of hiring managers out of those training programs, and how long do they stay in the roles? Let's look at employee surveys. Let's look at attrition rates. Let's look at feedback, manager feedback. Are you, as a leader, talking to people in the trenches and asking them how things are really going? And is it safe enough for them to talk about it? What's the attrition rate per manager per team? Because maybe you have a problem and maybe you
Yeah.
don't know what that is. I mean, there are dozens of things we can measure. What are your diversity stats look like? Do you have a diversity practice? Do you have business resource groups? How involved are they? Are they funded? I mean, there's just so many ways to infuse culture. But here's the thing. These are all ways to measure it. But the goodness that comes out of it, I mean, I told you the story about our giant $23 million deal. I've, as a leader myself, created incredible programs, first of a kind programs that no one had ever done before. We
Mm.
created a storytelling program around really complicated software. And I challenged my team. I said, okay, guys, I want you to curate a story about the product you sell, but you're going to tell it like you're talking to my retired school teacher mother. And this is going to help the whole team understand what it is you sell. And so when they would do that, all these light bulbs would be going on all over the place of, that's what that does. Oh my God, I need to introduce you to the customer, same customer, but I'm talking to a different guy. We need to get them together. All of a sudden, they're thinking differently. They're talking differently. They're innovating. They're creating new opportunities just because they see each other. And this happens when there's trust. This happens when it's a safe space. And you want to get the best out of people. So give them the environment to thrive. Autonomy is huge. And if you are one of those leaders that says, we have to be in the office, why?
Yeah.
What is so different about being in the office? Have you thought about the flexibility you can give your people and what that might do for their productivity? Anyway, that's a game changer.
No,
We
no,
could
no.
spend
And
a whole
COVID
podcast
led
on
us
that.
to that. And that's the beauty, the positive about COVID.
Yeah,
We know all the negatives. That's the positive. We can learn to do hybrids.
that's
It's
right.
fantastic. And it's great with the culture too. It makes it long term. Like this
Yes.
client you had, a lot of people are
Yes.
like, sell, sell, sell. I call it short term money is today, long term money is tomorrow.
Yeah.
Work
Yeah.
with people, build relationships. And that's what culture is all about.
Well, and the
What?
other
Go ahead.
piece of it, Steve, too, is, when your people see you behaving this way, they behave in kind.
Yeah.
And the really simple story, this sales VP was in a call center, imagine prairie dogging and everybody's, popping their heads up. And she was listening to people take calls. And she just started this practice of, if someone did a good job, she'd put a post-it note on their desk saying, loved you on that last call, you sounded great. Or, great job on the last sale. And she would just, do 4 or 5 a day. And everyone noticed. And they started doing it for each other. And it just changed the way the entire team functioned. And it created these opportunities for them to say, hey, Jimmy, you just closed that. Can I just shadow you? Can I listen to you? Because I think I could learn something versus I'm out here by myself and I got to make it or break it, or I'm going to lose my job. Like, let's teach each other. Let's learn from each other because we all know things that we can learn from. So that was just such a simple example, but imagine the ripple effect that little tiny thing had. So
Yeah.
cool.
The motto in sports a lot, and people have heard this, there's no I in team.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're saying. It's the same thing with business. What does, in your mind, the characteristics of a servant leader look like?
Hmm. Well, I think the first thing is we have to know why they wanted to get into leadership. And the first thing you've got to do is you've got to say, do I actually want to see people win? And if you do, you're in the right spot.
Mhm.
But I think the best servant leaders are curious. They ask a lot of questions and they meet their people where they are. So the best advice I always give to leaders is ask this one very humbling, very difficult question that will give you such a treasure trove of answers. And that is, how can I be the best leader for you? And when you ask that question, you're going to get different answers from everyone you ask. And that's based on age, tenure, experience, goals.
Yeah.
Everybody needs something different. Some people are going to say, stay the hell out of my way, just be my escalation point. Other people are going to say, I need a coach. Will you role play with me on this? Others will be like, I just don't understand my job. And can you help me? And when you understand what they need and how they like to be recognized, you can elevate your people in the best way. You can share the spotlight. You can give them opportunities. You can delegate to them in a way that they're going to succeed and they're going to be proud of their accomplishments. So all of those things I think make for the best
Yeah.
leaders and the best servant leaders.
What I'm hearing is flexibility,
Yeah.
which I haven't heard a lot when people talk. Not that if you don't talk about
Yeah.
flexibility, it's not a servant leader, but that's what you're saying. Each
Yeah.
individual. How about a servant leader in your personal life?
I've had a bunch. I mean, I was for as many bad leaders that I've had like a handful of really great leaders, and I'd say they equally contribute to how I lead. The things I would never do, I would never say, versus the things that I always will take with me. And I think, some of the best leaders, I told you the story about Sherry. I had another boss, Adriana, and when she promoted me for the first time, she said, so how do you want to run this business? And I went, me? You want to know what I think? You actually want to hear my ideas? Holy crap. Hold on. I'll come back to you in 2 days. I want to talk to my team because I actually have some ideas that I want to
Mhm.
try. And that just lit a fire. And she basically said, no, this is yours. So I'm here to help you, but like you run it. So, those are just some really great examples of how to do it right. And oh, by the way, feedback comes much easier when you are in a psychologically safe space. So that radical candor idea that we had a few years ago that everyone's like, oh, I can be brutally honest. I can just tell it like it is because I believe in radical candor. That did a lot of damage because you didn't have a psychologically safe space and
Yeah.
people were just hammering you with negative feedback. And whenever somebody says, hey, can I offer some feedback? It's never good because if it's good, they're just going to tell you. So, those are triggering words for a lot of people.
Yeah, communication's big, and I love telling the story you told because it's simple to do.
Yeah.
But this old big mine's a big noggin. Your big noggin, of course, gets in the way. In regards to the impact you make, can you have a story you could tell the client you work with and what
Mm.
the impact you made with them?
Oh gosh.
I know you probably have a lot, but
Yeah, I do. I'm trying to think of the one that would be the best. I mean, some of the coaching that I've been able to do, I got to coach a VP of sales, and she was super capable, very smart, but she was working under a guy who was a bit of a loose cannon, a bit hard for her to manage, and he was very hot and cold. And he would fly off the handle and react in nonsensical ways because he was under pressure and he wasn't aware of his actions and the ripple effect that had on her. So a lot of the coaching I did with her was, how are we going to respond to this? And
mm,
every time we took a breath and said, okay, he's having a hard time, let's go be of service to him and see him change his reaction. And so she was like, hey Bill, I sensed you are under a lot of stress. What can I help take off your plate? Immediately the response every time was, oh my God, Cammie, I am so sorry I talked to you that way. You didn't deserve that. You're doing the best job. I'm so lucky to have you. And as soon as she heard those words, she felt safe again. And she was like, okay, I can get back to doing what I'm doing. But it was, you have to manage up as much as you have to manage down when you're
absolutely.
a leader.
Yeah.
And, one last thing I'll just say is even if you don't have HR direct reports, you still can be a leader. And people need to remember that because when I was an individual contributor working with huge amounts of reps, they had choices. I wanted them to work with me. I was the leader of the account and I needed them as much as they needed to be in my accounts.
Yeah.
So, by creating that space for them and giving them autonomy and saying, just run it by me, tell me what you're going to do, and I will make all the intros you need.
Yeah. You're an
So,
incredible businesswoman. And I'm going to tell
thanks.
you why, audience. I'm going to bring the point she kind of glossed over because she's telling the story, but she told her client, be in service to him.
Mm,
One simple step, how can I serve you? Or
yeah.
whatever words you want to use, which is why she's on this show. And I'm bringing her back because that's a game changer. It's changed
Nice.
my life. It'll change yours. We got a little bit of time left. Let's talk about the book and your podcast so people can
Yeah.
access it.
Sure. So the book is called Top Down Culture. Hopefully you can see that. It's available on Amazon, and it is a lot of stories, a lot of illustration, but really my methodology for building modern leaders. And it's, revolutionizing leadership to drive results.
Awesome.
And then the podcast is called the Heartbeat for Hire podcast. It's on YouTube, it's on all the audio platforms, and I feature Olympians, professional athletes, CEOs, disruptors, Emmy-winning journalists, actors, really incredible humans that are sharing their stories of resilience with my lens on leadership and culture. So if you like a good story, this is your jam. But it's all really helped to show people the way. What is good leadership? What does having a good coach look like? How do you get yourself out of really some horrible situations? And my guests, we cry, we laugh, but it's like listening to an old friend. So I'd love for people to check it out.
Yeah, and I agree. I listened to one of the shows. It's inspiring, motivating, and educating, which is to me the goal for any podcast. If you hit that, I want to thank you again, Lyndsay. You are such a blessing. We
Thanks,
will bring you
man.
back because you have a
Love it.
lot more to say, a lot more to share. And I want to thank you all for listening. Don't forget about my TV show, Tuesday or Fridays, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Together we serve. Don't forget our new swag is out. You can get swag if you go to the show notes. We have new Doing Business with Servant's Heart swag. And I always say this advice. She has given you so many $1 million nuggets.
Mhm.
Watch this show again, listen to her. You're going to pick up some stuff that you didn't pick up the first time because I want you to be educated and motivated, inspired by what she said. And we'll see you all in the next episode of Doing Business with a Servant's Heart.